What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football, sports betting, and NASCAR home here at fakepigskin.com. I am your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me once again, it's Brian Twining. Brian, week 2 is in the books. Everyone's on IR except for Jordan Reed and Jerick McKinnon, which is very 2020. How's everything going for you?
Well, I mean, it kind of so far so good for me. I don't have any of the guys that are on IR that were in my starting lineups. I do have Courtland Sutton, but because he was injured entering the game anyways, he was sitting on my bench. So, I mean, it's not really a loss so far throughout the season. But, yeah, that was a crazy Sunday, some fantastic games, but the amount of injuries was just brutal.
Yeah, and we'll recap all the injuries. I'm sure you've heard them 100 times by now, and we'll give you kind of our kind of 2 cents on where we think what we think might happen. A few names maybe you could add off the waiver wire. If you want a purely waiver wire show, we recorded our top 5 options for this week's waiver wire. It's in its own separate show. Go check that out. It's 10 minutes. You can get in, you can get out, you can get on with your waiver claims. We wanted to kind of separate them, give you guys that want that a way to jump in, and for those that want a little more info, a little dive deeper, that's what Brian and I are here for. But Brian, before we dive into the whole week 2 slate, all the injuries, everything that's going on, Mike Clay tweeted out something that I thought was incredibly interesting, based upon the first 2 games, obviously, and this is before Monday night, so we haven't quite gotten there. But if you do game script adjusted pass heaviest offenses, which means if obviously there's a little bit of work there, but the Bills are number 1, the Seahawks are number 2, and it's Steelers, Cardinals, and Giants. Cardinals make a ton of sense. Steelers, especially even with, and we could talk about that Benny Snell situation, make a lot of sense with Dante Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster. But the Bills being number 1 and the Seahawks being number 2, it is insane to me. Let's start with Seattle, who I watched a lot of that game last night against New England. It's 2 weeks into the season. I was a little dubious of after week 1 that maybe week 1 was a little more game script dependent. That's why they threw it a little bit more. The Seahawks have clearly made a switch. I'm not sure what happened, but Russell Wilson, has been the best player on Seattle for basically since he got there. And they have continually took the ball out of his hands, given it to running backs, had an incredible defense to lean on. So maybe, conservative coaches doing conservative coach things, but through 2 games, it's Russell Wilson, and it's more Russell Wilson. And it's not just DK and Tyler Lockett. They're spreading the ball around. They're finding unique ways. They're throwing it to Chris Carson, who has all of a sudden become James White. And I'm not one bit upset about that because he's still producing and maybe actually will be more consistent on a week to week, knowing that his floor is higher because of all those targets. But like Seattle, I think we have to mentally change our what we think of them in our mind as this is a team that's going to throw it a bunch. And, obviously they're going to have games where they're going to be up a lot and they're going to lean on the running game and Carlos Hyde and Chris Carson. But Russell Wilson, he's going to be a legit, difference maker this year.
Yeah, I mean, they really are letting Russ cook. I mean, that was something to behold last night. Watching him drop those teardrops into those receivers' hands was a thing of beauty. The touchdown pass that he threw to DK Metcalf, where Metcalf just kind of shouldered up who most people believe is the best corner in football and was able to catch that over his shoulder and just keep his balance and get into the end zone. Their battle all night. I think this is Seattle adjusting to the weapons that there are now there, whereas before they've never had a duo like a Metcalf and a Tyler Lockett, where you have that kind of traditional big wide receiver who could just man up against any corner in the NFL, and the fast guy like a Lockett who can make anybody feel like they're on ice skates out there. So I think this is it's fantastic to watch. I think we all kind of undersold ourselves on Russell Wilson entering the season. He's looking like QB1 right now. I think they're going to play a lot of games that are high scoring as well, just because the defense is not the greatest either. So like upcoming in week 3, they get Dallas. I mean, the implied total on that game should probably be somewhere in the 60s. This should be more of a college game, not an NFL game. But yeah, it's been great.
And they get 2 games against Arizona, 2 games against a depleted San Francisco defense. The Rams have a great front 7, but their back end is really vulnerable. They're going to throw. They're going to throw a lot, and they're going to be really productive. Josh Allen has turned into a player that nobody thought he would be coming out of Wyoming. Everyone made fun of him. Everyone said he had no accuracy. He threw for 417 yards and 4 touchdowns yesterday against Miami. Granted, they lost Byron Jones. They were depleted a little bit in the secondary, but a 60, almost 69, very nice completion percentage. This after a 71.7 versus the Jets. We thought, okay, that's the Jets. We'll see. 312 yards, 2 touchdowns against them. This is a guy who has, 730 yards and 6 touchdowns through 2 games. As someone currently holding a Josh Allen to win MVP ticket, I'm feeling very good about that. Although Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray are definitely trying to crush my dreams with that one. He's not running quite as much, but he still had 14 carries and the touchdown against the Jets. It'll probably be a little more game script dependent, but if he's going to be throwing this consistently, this well, adding Stephon Diggs to go with John Brown, to go with Cole Beasley, to go with Dawson Knox, who's also in concussion protocol. And they still keep throwing Zach Moss out there. He's getting all the goal line work. We'll see what that situation looks like. He's still wildly unproductive, but hopefully that it fixes itself. But this offense is fun. This offense is throwing a lot. And in an AFC East that's wide open, that doesn't have any. I mean, the Patriots look pretty damn good with Cam Newton under center, but like the Bills could win this division. They could look really good in the process. And if they're going to be throwing 30 to 40 times a game, even in game scripts that don't necessarily require it, Josh Allen's going to be incredible. And if you have Stephon Diggs or John Brown or any of those guys, they need to be weekly starters in your lineup.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of like maturation of Josh Allen has been a lot faster than what any of us could have envisioned. I mean, coming from a guy who was completing less than 60% of his passes to this pinpoint accurate quarterback, putting it right on the hands of Stephon Diggs and getting it out to John Brown, letting his little wide receivers do their thing and, run past defenders all day. And the fact that a lot of these passes aren't of the short variety. Like they're taking deep shots and they ain't messing around over there in Buffalo. Like they're letting Josh Allen sling it. And that was one thing that nobody questioned coming out of Wyoming was his arm strength. And now that he's got 2 guys who can go after the ball on those deep routes, like this offense is a lot better than what any of us thought coming in. And this Buffalo team will definitely hit that 8.5 team win over, I believe.
Yeah.
And they are definitely a force to be reckoned with in the AFC with how good they play defense as well.
Yeah, and I think going forward with the maturation of both Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, we need to be a little more patient with these guys. And obviously, having that mobility allows them to get in and play better earlier and then, develop as a passer. If they're just a statue back there and they're going to get crushed, they're not going to be productive. And that's where the league's going. Like 80% of the league, you need to have mobility, whether that's just mobile in the pocket, like a Tom Brady, or be able to get out on the edge, do what you need to do. And we saw it again from Justin Herbert last week, which, if the Chargers go back to Tyrod Taylor, like Anthony Lynn's got to go. Like that makes no sense. But Justin Herbert looked incredibly poised for making his first start against a really good Chiefs team where he went toe to toe and obviously made some rookie mistakes, but made some great throws as well and looked really impressive. But yeah, let's dive into these rash of injuries because we lost 2 of arguably the top like 3 or 4 picks in Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley. We'll start with the better news, I guess, and that's Christian McCaffrey, who is only dealing with a high ankle sprain. We'll see how long how long he is out. But as a running back, it's a little more concerning just because it's required to plant and cut and move. In terms of while McCaffrey is out, what are your expectations for this offense? Like, everyone's gonna go to the the depth chart and okay, Christian McCaffrey out. Who's below him? Mike Davis. All my fab on Mike Davis. I'm not sure if that's the plan, but what are your thoughts on what this offense may look like?
I mean, we've seen Mike Davis have flash in the pan games before, and yesterday he looked serviceable back there in a game that they were getting smoked. I mean, they did make a valiant comeback effort because Tampa Bay shut it down midway through the third quarter. But yeah, no, I don't want any of the guys that are backing him up. I think this lends more to them getting their wide receivers a little more involved. I mean, we talked prior to recording, Curtis Samuel has a history of playing running back at Ohio State. He has one of the most heartbreaking moments as a Michigan fan's
and one of the most glorifying, amazing moments of any Ohio State fan.
Where he ran out of the backfield, ran it into touchdown against Michigan. But yeah, Samuel has a history there. I think we see a lot more gimmick plays. We see them getting the ball to the guys in space. We're seeing Robbie Anderson have a resurgence in love, and he's going to be a hot ad for people that for in leagues where he's not there.
Once again, Adam Gase is proving to be a terrible coach.
This guy, if the Jets do not fire Adam Gase prior to the season ending, then maybe they need to reevaluate themselves as team owners and think about getting out of the business, because they're obviously not in the business of winning if they do not see the trends of what's happening right now. But going back to the Panthers, I want no part of Mike Davis, Reggie Bonifon. I don't want any of those dudes. I'm going after the pass catchers there. They're going to be trailing in every game this season. Yeah, they're just bad.
Yep, they're bad. Robbie Anderson, to your point, 9 catches on 10 targets for 109 yards. This is after 6 catches on 8 targets for 114 yards. He's worth adding. I think Mike Davis is worth a look. If you can get him on the cheap and you're desperate at running back, obviously, we're going to talk Saquon here in a bit. There's a bunch of names that are down. You're going to need some depth. And if this offense can be more consistent, maybe he gets a few looks, but I'm with you. It's Curtis Samuel, it's Robbie Anderson, it's DJ Moore, and I think it's Ian Thomas. I think this, Joe Brady is a creative mind. I think he's going to want to throw. We saw it at LSU last year. I think he's going to try and open up this offense a little more. And, as much as it's going to suck for McCaffrey owners, this might be a positive for the offense in terms of opening things up, because oftentimes when you have somebody who's that good, you have to scheme around getting them the ball. And now you can scheme around what's going to make the most sense and not worry about handing it to your running back 15 times or 20 times a game. I think he'll be back. I think there's, obviously Carolina's in no chance of winning, anything major this year. So don't rush him back. It's frustrating for those who took him first overall and for the right reasons. But I think lean on the passing game. The other guy that we're going to talk about, and obviously we're talking week 2 injuries because there are lots and lots and lots of them. Saquon Barkley, torn ACL, done for the year. This one was brutal. It seemed pretty apparent quickly that he was going to be down for a while. Took his helmet off, was hitting the ground. Was tackled awkwardly. It wasn't non-contact, so they thought maybe there was something, but he is completely done. And once again, I don't think we want. I'm not if you need somebody desperately, Dion Lewis. I guess, but I am trying to go look under every other rock before I head that way.
Yeah, to that point, like we mentioned at the top of the show, talking about the pass heaviest teams, and the Giants are 5th in that category.
Yep.
Even with Barkley back there, they haven't been able to find any kind of running room. I know they faced the Steelers and Chicago has a decent run defense as well, but traditionally and over the past couple of years, the Giants have struggled to create room and space for their running backs. I don't think it's going to be any different with anybody else back there. I think Wayne Gallman it kind of sees a little more of the rushing attempts there, but it's not a situation that I'm looking to add unless I am a McCaffrey owner, somebody who had a McCaffrey and a Phillip Lindsay, and now I'm really hurting at the position, but only in a dire situation am I looking to add these guys.
Yeah, I mean, you can go listen to our waiver wire pod, but like Josh Kelly, any of the Niners guys, even Darrell Henderson, like there's so many other names that Myles Gaskin, I'd be adding over both these guys. Even like I just think this Giants offense is going to be something to avoid. Like Evan Ingram, maybe Darius Slayton. That's pretty much it. Like I watched a lot of this game yesterday against the Giants, and it just looked anemic. They looked bad. Jason Garrett, I don't know what he's doing. He's a figure something out. Yeah, he's clapping a lot. Like I tweeted in week 1, different same clap. Yeah, it's not great. Let's talk another injured player. This time we'll go to receiver, and we'll talk about Davante Adams, who looks like he's going to miss significant time again for the second straight season. Hamstring strain is going to keep him out. Luckily for Green Bay, it seems like Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Alan Lazard are both incredibly interesting names to kind of look at. And Aaron Rodgers should be another one of those. Like he seems to have figured things out, and adding AJ Dillon and Jordan Love especially really reminded him. I don't know. It seems like it opened things up. I mean, it probably is just coincidental, but Lazard for the short term and MVS are both guys that I would be adding if you need receiving help and they're still out there. I think they see an uptick in targets for the probably week or two would be my guess, but definitely pay attention to practice reports, injury reports coming out of Green Bay. And yesterday, I guess, Aaron Jones was a lot more back in the fold, not only on the ground with 168 and 2 touchdowns, but was involved in the passing game with four catches on 8 targets for 68 yards. So he's somebody like if you drafted Aaron Jones and you got a nice, second round price on him, he might be back more towards that guy that we saw as kind of the top overall running back in last season.
Yeah, I'm coming into this season when we were doing our rankings and we were talking about regression was a major topic, especially with Aaron Jones. I mean, he had a ton of touchdowns last year, and the expectation was there was no way he was going to say similar numbers. And all this dude is doing right now is scoring friggin' touchdowns. Yep. It's ridiculous. He's like been their entire – him and Davante Adams were the entire offense in week 1. Week 2 was pretty much all Aaron Jones with the spattering of the wide receivers and a tight end finally who's not named Jay Sternberger. But – I love the 2 wide receivers as adds at the back end of the bench. And I think a guy, too, who I'd be looking to get onto my roster right now is Jamal Williams, he's been performing extremely well instead of Aaron Jones at times during the game. They seem to consistently still want to get him into the flow. And if Jones were to ever miss any time, you're looking at a guy who could be an RB1 immediately with AJ Dillon, clearly behind the pack in terms of what they want to do there for the pack.
Yeah. And MVS, like 13 targets in the first 2 games. That was with Adams playing for the most of it. Good sign that Rodgers is gaining trust there. Let's head to Denver, where they have a rash of injuries. Obviously, they lost Lindsey already. Drew Lock, severe rotator cuff strain, will be sidelined at least 2 weeks before he's reevaluated. I'd bank on a month for him. Yeah. That means it's Jeff Driscoll time, which is actually – as bad as ineffective as he may seem, was really good last year for Detroit, especially because he's so mobile and can utilize his legs. And I think, they obviously brought him in as a backup for a reason. Here, he's thrusted into the starting role. Obviously won't have Courtland Sutton with a torn ACL, but, he misses the week 1. They thrust him back in. Field maybe it was a little early. Who knows? Torn ACL, done for the year. What are we doing with this offense in general? Jeff Driscoll, they still have Melvin Gordon, who looked all right in week 2. My boy KJ Hamler in his first start saw a ton of targets. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy, Noah Fant. Like, there's still stuff to be excited about, but with Jeff Driscoll under center, are you still optimistic about what this offense may look like?
It's not an offense that I'm shying away from by any means, like the Giants right now, who we thought coming in Daniel Jones was going to be a sleeper pick for, a top 12 quarterback, and that's clearly not the case right now. The guys for Denver, like you were saying, Jeff Driscoll at the end of last season, I mean, even he was still putting up numbers for that Lions team because of his mobility and his ability to get away from, the pass rush and all that kind of stuff. And I think this kind of plays more into what Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler offer as far as route runners. Now that Courtland Sutton's gone, I think we're going to see them getting a ton of at the line of scrimmage receptions. So if you're in a PPR league, I still like both those guys. Noah Fant yesterday was still a focal point of that offense. I think this is going to affect the running game a little bit more. I think teams are going to stack the box a little bit more against Denver without Sutton out there and without Drew Lock, he's a big arm quarterback. It's not the best scenario for these guys, but Jerry Jeudy and Hamler are good ads if they're somebody dumped them, or if somebody's looking to trade them, I'd be looking to get them on the low for the potential of just those big target shares that we're going to see with this team going forward without Drew Lock.
Yeah. Even Jeff Driscoll played the majority of this game. 256 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, had a couple rushes for 5 yards. Like I said, he's going to run the ball. He's going to throw the ball.
And this was against the Steelers defense, who is probably, I think in my opinion, I watched every single game, probably the best defense in the NFL in terms of their all-around ability to stuff the run, rush the passer, cover wide receivers down the field. So, that's pretty impressive for a guy who was thrust into game action with no expectation of playing at all.
Yeah, and in the second half, scored 18 points. Jeudy saw 7 targets. Hamler saw 7 targets, a team high. So for his first game, obviously his production at 3 and 48 aren't exactly what you're looking for. I feel much better about him, and I'm excited because he was the guy that I was incredibly excited about coming out in the draft. Obviously, got injured. This is a team that added a bunch of receiving help, so it was kind of murky in terms of how beneficial he could be early in the season. To see him get this kind of ad is really good to see. Paris Campbell, torn ACL, done for the year. We talked about Michael Pittman and Mo Alley Cox in the waiver wire show. We like them a lot. The other thing that I noticed watching this game is it sure seemed like Nyheim Hines. He got all the punt return and kick return duties. And that kind of sucked away. Obviously, only had 1 target, no carries, a vast change from week 1. Jonathan Taylor is clearly the lead back there, but with Hines as the return man, I wonder if they're less willing to involve him otherwise. And maybe it was just, we need you to return a bunch in this game. We don't really have anyone behind you, so we're going to have you just primarily do that. And then maybe they sign somebody. So kind of keep an eye on transactions and what the coaches are saying. But from Hines basically being the goal line back and super heavily used in week 1 to not used at all, it is a bit concerning, especially for those that used a large chunk of their fab to go out and add him.
I still think this is a situation where you're definitely holding Hines right now, because yesterday's game, they were just absolutely grading the road against the Minnesota, who this is not the Vikings of old.
Nope.
Currently, they don't have any kind of defensive pressure. They're not able to stop the run right now. This is just a bad Vikings team. It's looking like, and to that point though as well, going into the NFL draft, we were constantly having discussions over who we thought was the best 3-down traditional style running back, and I think we got to see a glimpse of the reason why Indianapolis really wanted this guy, in that Jonathan Taylor is a 3-down running back in the NFL. He hardly came off the field yesterday. And I think the injury to Marlon Mack may have actually hurt Nyheim Hines slightly, because before it was Mack and Jonathan Taylor who were kind of playing the similar role, with Hines coming in for all the passing game duty, to kind of keep everyone fresh, where now they just want Jonathan Taylor to be back there to just pound the rock, take those little play action passes. And there's a steep decline in ability from having Jonathan Taylor or Marlon Mack as your 1B to having Jordan Wilkins as your 1B. So
yeah. And in games where they have a big lead, Wilkins is going to get he saw 10 carries yesterday, looked pretty solid with those 10 carries. In games where it's more of a negative game script, it'll probably be Hines seeing those 10 touches, but it'll probably fluctuate. Let's run through a couple more injuries, and then I want to talk a few more wild shifts in production, because there was a couple names that we were excited about and didn't really live up to our expectations. Let's talk Niners, because like I said, they're outside of like Jordan Reed and Jerick McKinnon, that team's like severely hampered. Obviously, Tevin Coleman's going to miss multiple weeks. Raheem Mostert is definitely not playing Sunday. Jimmy Garoppolo has a high ankle sprain, going to miss some time. What are we doing with this offense? And as we kind of look ahead to week 3, because of COVID, teams aren't allowed to like go out to the East Coast and stay there for a couple weeks. They have to fly back.
Yeah.
Are you a little concerned about this offense this week? Obviously, they're playing the Giants. The Giants have looked bad through 2 weeks. But I guess, with Nick Mullins and Jeff Wilson Jr. and Jerick McKinnon and Jordan Reed, like, is this an offense you're still somewhat interested? Because a lot of these pieces are going to be available. And if you're trying to fill holes, this might be a good opportunity if you believe they can perform up to the levels that are required of your starting lineup.
Yeah, I mean, we talked on our waiver wire show about the running back situation right now with Coleman and Mostert out. And I have no problem playing a Jerick McKinnon and a Jeff Wilson upcoming against the Giants team, who just allowed somebody who everybody was kind of down on entering the season, David Montgomery, go for over 80 yards against them. And he's playing up much better. But this Giants team, much to the same effect as, a couple of these other teams who aren't performing the same way as we kind of expected, like the Minnesota Vikings, they can't stop anybody right now. And the offense isn't playing very good. So whether or not San Francisco has injuries, I really don't think that the Giants are going to be able to beat San Francisco. I think it'll be pretty close, but I still think the running backs are going to be involved as heavily as ever in the passing game, short passes. Nick Mullins back there, they're not going to be taking 7-step drops with him. It's going to be a quick 3 steps, boom, dump it off on the swing route, on screens, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, I'm more concerned about like if Kittle were to come back, I'd be very wary about looking at him. I'd be looking at other options. But the running back situation, because the other two are out, and San Francisco's kind of, the way they live their life is let's keep the ball on the ground and get it to our runners. Yeah, I love the running backs still.
Yep. Let's talk Rams. Cam Akers had a rib injury, left the game, did not return. He's getting an MRI today or tomorrow. Malcolm Brown had a finger issue, which kind of hampered him in this game. 11 carries for 47 yards. That opened up the door for Darrell Henderson for 12 carries, 81 yards, and a touchdown. Looked pretty good. If Akers is going to miss time and Brown's a little banged up, I'd much rather add Darrell Henderson than anybody in Carolina or the Giants or Miami or any of these situations where it's just ugly offenses and muddled backfields.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams, I got to admit, man, they're a lot better than what I thought they were going to be. I thought the game against the Cowboys was kind of fluky with the amount that they wanted to run, but I mean, they did a similar game plan out against the Eagles, who have a much better rush defense than the Cowboys, and it didn't matter who was back there. They were still getting big chunk plays. So yeah, Henderson is a great add if he's still sitting out down there. I mean, he came in last year, and we were expecting him to take over for Gurley eventually. So yeah, the Rams are a lot better than what we thought. I think that entire division is really good, even with the 49ers injuries.
Yeah, the Rams have really fixed a lot along the offensive line. They got a new scheme. Sean McVay's got something new. We'll see if the NFL can figure it out before the end of the season, but it's really opening up things for Jared Goff, who I was really excited about after 1 week. Got kind of, did I read this wrong? Turns out I did not. He looks like he's going to be good. It's going to be, I think, a little frustrating for Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee, and depending on the matchup there, I think they're going to be a lot more versatile, and I think if they can get up, they're going to run the ball a lot more than they expected. So we'll see what that situation looks like. But like I said, if you need a running back, Henderson makes a lot of sense, especially if Akers misses time, because Akers was going to be the guy. It was going to be his show, and even with Brown kind of running in, then he got injured and kind of left and whatever. Let's talk Pittsburgh. We talked a lot of Benny Snell, and I think for the right reasons. Apparently, James Conner is completely healthy and looked great. 16 carries, 106 yards, 6.6 a clip, a touchdown. The Steelers lean heavily on their one running back, whether, no matter who it is. If their starter is healthy, he's going to play 80% of the snaps. He's going to get all the touches. He's going to be incredibly involved. I'm not, especially if you spent like a good chunk of your fab on Benny Snell, I'm not dropping him this waiver period, because if Connor gets hurt or goes back to being ineffective, Snell's going to get another shot, because he looked great in week 1. This is an offense that, we kind of talked about it a lot off heading into the season, but with Big Ben under center, it's a different offense. And Dante Johnson, 8 for 92 on 13 targets. Big Chase Claypool touchdown. Juju had 8 targets, 7 for 48. Ebron, 3 for 43. James Washington, like they're gonna be mixing it around. They're gonna have a lot of throws. I think the Steelers team is going to be very legit, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But yeah, so be wary. Just if Connor's healthy, he's the guy. If Benny Snell gets the nod, feel free to throw him right in your lineups, because he's going to get the volume too. But I did want to hit on but kind of both him and Hines, because we can only go off of what we know, right? Here's what the coaches are showing us. Here's what happened on the field. Here's based on the game script. Stuff changes as players get hurt. Stuff changes as players are all of a sudden healthy. Was there any other big reactions to week 2 that you want to hit on, or that really stood out to you?
So one of the ones, and this has to do with like the guy who you and I are all about, and that's our boy Rojo. So he got the start. He looked good. He got a touchdown, and then there was that botched handoff between he and Brady, and you instantaneously, as soon as that happened, I looked at my wife and I said, well, there goes the job, because you knew right away Arians was going to be pissed. He put in Leonard Fournette. Fournette saw the bulk of the touches the remainder of the game. He broke off a huge one at the end of the game. And then you're over here prior to the show reading an Arians quote like about how good Rojo is, and that Fournette doesn't know
that he doesn't know the offense and the playbooks well enough to be quote unquote the starter. This was all. I mean, he keeps tapping the table for Rojo. So maybe it was all right, Rojo, you fumbled. You're going to learn from this. Next week we'll go back into the starting role. We'll keep an eye on that situation. If they're going to be in matchups like this where they can run the ball as much as they are, maybe they're both useful. But yeah, I feel like it's going to be frustrating for no matter which running back you own.
I was just going to say, I think this is going to be a situation all year that's just a hair puller, and maybe one you want to kind of punt for this season until they can kind of settle on a guy, because that's your worst nightmare as a fantasy player, is guessing that it's going to be one guy 1 week and he say it's the first carry of the game, he fumbles and he doesn't get another touch the rest of the game. So
I feel like with between injuries and just committees, running back has just become an incredibly difficult situation. And now guys that we quote unquote knew were workhorse guys like Saquon, like Christian McCaffrey are out missing time. It's incredibly interesting. At least Jonathan Taylor clearly seems to be that guy. Aaron Jones seems to be that guy. So that does help. Antonio Gibson seems to be that guy. 13 carries, 55 yards, a touchdown, couple targets in the passing game. Obviously, this is a Washington offense that has some work to do, but it got better. Terry McLaurin, 7 catches for 125 and a touchdown, looked really good. And I think Arizona's defense is actually pretty solid. So while it wasn't a great day for the offense as a whole, to see signs that they were trending in the right direction was also a positive for me.
I will say it's extremely interesting to me to see the Washington football team 2 weeks in a row now put up a complete stinker of a first quarter or first half. And then the second half, they come out and they look like a completely different team with their aggressiveness turned up another notch. I know they were trailing in both instances, but if they were to come out with this kind of vigor at the beginning of the game, I think they would be much more formidable on the offensive side of the ball. Gibson, they got him more heavily involved. He is a utility knife. Like we talked about on our show on Sunday morning, Terry McLaurin has breakaway ability on any play. there's a lot of pieces here to like, especially as we move further along in the season.
Yep.
And I think it's something I want to be slightly invested in right now, because if it does start to click and they do start to come out with more of an aggressive game plan, I think there is a lot of fantasy points to be put up by this team.
Yep, I totally agree. Brian, as we mentioned, there's a whole waiver wire show with 5 targets. Add anyone else in that we didn't include in there that you will be trying to add maybe on the slight? Like for me, Brandon Ayuk stands out as somebody that, while he didn't have a tremendous week 1, was on the field a lot, running a lot of plays. As we mentioned, this is a team that needs wide receiver help. No Mohamed Sanu, or very little Mohamed Sanu in week 2, so we'll see how quickly he can get involved. But is there any other kind of under the radar names that you're looking to add ahead of week 3?
Well, I mean, there's a couple, and I'm going to go back to your Titans here. In all likelihood, if you're in a 1 quarterback league, Ryan Tannehill's probably not rostered. I'd be adding him right away, because we completely undervalued him coming into this season, because he's putting up the same numbers again. Yeah. And it's the scare of Derrick Henry back there. And to the Derrick Henry point, I'd also, if you have a deep bench, I'm looking to add Darrington Evans before he finally gets on the field, because one thing that we all know about Henry is, although they're trying to get him more involved in the passing game, he is just not a threat at all in that. And then also another piece there with A.J. Brown missing, and we don't know how long he's going to be out. That's got to be Adam Humphries.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he looks great. Ryan Tannehill is slinging the ball like nobody's business right now. This offense is chugging down the field. I want every bit that I can of a Tannehill-led offense in Tennessee.
Yeah, Adam Humphries and Scotty Miller are both 2 interesting names for full PPR. But yeah, Ryan Tannehill, I dropped Carson Wentz for him. I dropped Matthew Stafford for him.
Poor Carson Wentz.
Phillip Rivers. Like, there's a bunch of guys that I'm dropping. Baker Mayfield. And adding him with Jonnu, with Corey Davis stepping up, with A.J. Brown hopefully being back, with his running ability. He's incredibly productive with the throws he gets. He's going to have some games like we saw in week 1 where he's going to be 35, 40 attempts. There's going to be some games like we saw yesterday with 25 attempts, but he's still finding ways to be incredibly productive. He's in a division that can be thrown on with Indy and Jacksonville and Houston, and A.J. Brown's up back fully healthy. That passing game is going to look legit. I like that call quite a bit. All right, Brian, like I mentioned, if you want to check out our waiver wire calls, go check that out. We'll be back on Thursday ahead of our Wednesday. We'll record Wednesday for your feed on Thursday to get you set for, or I don't know. All these days are running together. We're recording Thursday. It'll be on your feed Friday to get you set for week 3. And then on Sunday morning, join us live. We will answer your betting questions, your start sit questions, your trade questions. We will try to help get you set to win in week 3. I would say another solid performance. Were there a couple misses? Of course, you're not going to get them all. But we had a lot of good calls, including Terry McLaurin, including Antonio Gibson.
Including keeping DK in the lineup.
Yes, I was very wrong about Russ, by the way. And we had talked about that in terms of kind of what that offense may look like, wrapping it all the way back to where we started. That offense is different. Start Russ every game. Start DK every game. Start Tyler Lockett every game.
Start Chris Carson every game.
Yeah, and get those pieces in your offense, because they are going to have a great season. For Brian Twining, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.